Hey, IOSDEX here, #1 private Overwatch coach over on iosdex.com and former head coach for organizations such as NYXL and the Boston Uprising.
Yeah, I can see it. I'm watching it right now.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm from Germany, and you know what our internet speeds are as high as our tuition. So if there's any connection dropouts or something, let me know. By the way, Overwatch 2 is a little bit dumb. Whenever I pause and unpause, there's like no animation. So if the screen just freezes like this, just assume that I paused. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I'm just in case, if it gets a little pixelated, let me know. Maybe I can drop the resolution or something. But okay, before we even start to look at the gameplay, I want to hear from you what the give me a little crash course, a little Kiriko crash course on how you're playing her right now.
So me, I am currently playing her more as so the way I play her is I try to keep player a little bit back, but if I see an opportunity to go aggressive within like the positioning that I'm in, I'll start taking high ground and I'll start watching the fight, seeing who needs heals. And if let's say if we get a pick, I start going aggressive. I start going up on let's say second point defense of in the streets phase of what's this called? What's this thing called?
This map?
This map.
King's Row.
This map. King's Row. So second point, like they're about to cap. We get a pick. I'd start taking position on top of the high ground on above the tunnel entryway and watching out for any kind of opportunities, whether somebody needs healing or if there's somebody that I can potentially take a pick from, stuff like that. Okay, so it's very momentum. Very momentum. I try to play in the back a little bit, but if I see an opportunity where I can flank and hurt somebody, I'll do that. Does that make sense?
Can you define what you mean by flank?
Going off onto like different angles. If I have a DPS that's on the flank, I'll join them at times. Like on either high ground or just somewhere that the enemy is not, where the enemy is not, and not occupying.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, I understand what you're. It doesn't make sense, but I understand what you're saying. if that makes sense.
Like trying to get behind them or trying to get them from the sides.
Okay.
Something along those lines.
Interesting.
But that doesn't really show.
So how did you come to that conclusion that you kind of want to flank as Kiriko?
So one of them is that her kit is very mobile, so she can join let's say she joins a DPS going like a Reaper coming from the top. I can join the Reaper, ensure that enable him to get his kills, and then if something were to happen in the main fight, I can TP back into the main fight and then support there. Does that make sense?
Yes, but there are two main flaws. Can you think of what they are?
Well, if I'm not with the team, then I'm not really helping them. I'm not really enabling their their roles. That's one thing. Also, there's a high possibility of me getting picked and dying. Those are the two things that I can think of.
True. Yes. Okay. So the first thing is you mentioned that you like to go on flanks with your DPS, for example, because you can enable them. Right? So for example, you have a Reaper and you want to be with him because you can, like, I'm assuming, heal him and whatnot. Right? That means that you are investing all of your attention and all of your resources into that Reaper. Is that a wise investment?
More times not. More times it's not a smart idea.
Right? So if we want to climb, it's not about enabling our teammates. It's about enabling ourselves and shutting down enemies. And the support that we give to our teammates, we want to make very, very safe investments with that, right? So for example, if we pump healing into our tank, that's a very, very safe investment, right? Because with the Reaper, for example, he could just get one shot, right? And even if he doesn't get one shot, right, your healing would only be useful if it allowed him to stay in the fight longer. But let's say the Reaper goes in and he gets down to 50 HP. Do you think he's going to rely on you healing him? Or do you think he's just going to press shift and go out?
Probably going to shift out.
Right? So you're not really theoretically, you could enable him. Theoretically, he could play around your heal, right? But in reality, there's no guarantee that that's actually going to happen. Whereas if you heal your Reinhardt, for example, that's very guaranteed value because it strengthens your front line, which enables the rest of your team because they can utilize the space that the tank creates. And
got it.
The second issue is you mentioned that, okay, I'm on my flank, with my Reaper, for example, and if shit hits the fan, if the rest of my team needs help, I can always TP to them. But if you think about, if you just kind of let this, if you say it out loud, right? When shit hits the fan, I TP to my team. That can be rephrased as I TP to wherever shit hits the fan. And do we want to TP in there? Like, let's say your entire team is getting overrun. Let's say your Reinhardt is critical, right? Very low HP. Mm-hmm. What is the enemy team gonna do? They're gonna push. They're gonna play super aggressive, and they're gonna try to run your team over. And then you TP in there, and now you're going to be in the middle of Dante's Inferno, without your TP. And obviously the TP itself is blind, right? You can see your teammates through walls, but you can't see enemies. So you could be, maybe you're Reinhardt, right? Maybe he's in the middle of the enemy team, and so there's a lot of risks attached. And obviously those are all very noble thoughts, wanting to enable your flankers and using off angles and everything. But the reality is that in practice, it can leave your front line a little bit starved of resources, right? So if we look at your team comp here, for example, your Cassidy, he might want to go on a flank, and you might think to yourself, okay, I'm going to go on a flank with him, right? But the problem is that leaves your Torb and your Reinhardt, who aren't on a flank, let's say they play together, with a Lucio. And no offense to Lucio, but his healing output isn't that significant. Maybe a Baptiste or a Moira can handle that a little bit better, but a Lucio is going to very quickly feel overwhelmed. Like his healing just doesn't suffice, right? And that means that your Cassidy needs to gain a lot out of you being with him in order to justify you not being with the rest of your team.
Okay, so I need to do a little bit more like weighing whether an action is worth it or not. A little bit more of that.
Exactly. So prioritize on your own value, right?
Got it.
So an example where going on a flank as Kiriko might be good, for example, right, is maybe one of your teammates got picked, right? And okay, if I just continue heal botting here, we're not going to win this 4v5. You might go down a little side alley and see if you can maybe two-tap, the enemy Widowmaker, for example, catch her by surprise to secure a pick, and then TP back to your team, right? So that's a situation where taking this kind of risk can be worth it, but you shouldn't do it just on, the trust alone that whichever teammate you're supporting on the flank is going to be super duper useful. Okay,
that makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's actually take a look at some gameplay so we have something, some specific situations to kind of look at. You also mentioned in terms of positioning that you like taking high ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, why does high ground suck really, really bad as Kiriko?
I really don't have an answer for that one.
Okay, I'm going to explain it. It's going to seem very, very obvious. There we go. 1 second. Just taking a note so that I actually know about it later. Okay, so let's say...
Actually, so really quick, I actually fall off here and I can't get back up, so you can...
Think of it as divine intervention. right?
Yeah.
The game is saving you from yourself. So let's take this Cassidy as an example, right? So what directions can he move in?
You could just on doesn't really have any X, can't really go up the Z axis, but
Okay, okay. I'm sorry. I phrased the question. That was kind of unnecessary. He can move forwards, backwards, left, or right.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
If we stand here, if he moves, okay, so if we stand here, right? If he moves to the left, we need to adjust. If he moves to the right, we need to adjust. If he moves forwards or backwards, yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's for like it's for my left click, if I'm correct on that one, right?
If you've bounded to left click, yes. Your kunai.
I bounded it to left click, so
yes.
Yeah, I did.
Right. I always refer to abilities by their default keybind. So if I ever say right click, just assume I mean the kunai. I know it's a little bit confusing, but I have to, right? Because not everyone uses those specific keybinds.
I get it.
But if he moves to the left or to the right, we need to adjust. But by being on the same level as him, we basically completely negate any of his forwards or backwards movements. And especially in lower ranks, people aren't exactly known for being very, very proficient at AD strafing, right? Which means that a large portion of their movement is moving forwards and backwards, which means that from your perspective, they're standing still, right? The second benefit is that if you look at the Widowmaker and if you look at the Cassidy, their heads are at the same height.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say you aim for the Cassidy and you miss. Maybe you hit the Widowmaker, right?
Yeah.
If we are up here, all of a sudden there's 4 cardinal directions an enemy can move in on our screen. So if they're moving forwards and backwards, we have to adjust for that. Just adds an extra dimension of complexity. And if we miss the Cassidy here, we're not very likely to accidentally hit Widowmaker in the head.
Yeah.
Right? So for those reasons, you want to be you want to avoid high ground as much as possible, not just with Kiriko, but with all projectile characters. Right? If you play Zenyatta, for example, right? As Zenyatta, it's very important to land to one-shot people with your right-click, your charged-up shot. That's something that is not impossible from high ground, but practically impossible, I think is what we can call it, right? So it's actually really, really good that you're on the low ground here. And yeah, all we want to do here, right, is we just want to spam our kunai down the choke. And in order to do that crap, I need to change this so it doesn't jump fucking 20 seconds. Here we go. In order to do that effectively, it is very important that we don't jump, because jumping, again, puts us, higher, so it messes with our crosshair placement. Does it make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. So, right here, all we should be doing is just peek shoot. You know what peek shooting is?
Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with it.
Right, that's the great thing. We're familiar with it, but for some reason we don't do it. Is this peek shooting right now? Not really.
Not really.
So there's a lot of jumping. There's an over-reliance on the on the Reinhardt. Right here, obviously teleporting to your Cassidy in order to heal him is the correct move, right? But as you can see, it's nicer to stay with your team and then just TP to flankers when they need it, rather than staying with your with the flankers by default. And now you're in this very, very awkward position. But again, you're Kiriko, you can just TP whenever. That E is fine. You're also doing a very good job interweaving your kunai shots in between healing, which is good. Just apply some extra pressure. Very nice. But again, your movement is absolutely atrocious. There's really no nice way to put this. This is not... I mean, when was the last time you jumped in real life?
Not a lot.
I can't remember the last time I genuinely jumped. Maybe that says something about how unhappy my life is. I never jump out of joy. But the point being that it's for a lot of people, it's kind of like jumping is kind of like fidgeting. It's not really something that you do intentionally. It's kind of just, my thumb is down there and it's not really doing anything, so I'm just gonna fucking mesh the spacebar for no reason. As a little tip, I would bind crouch, your crouch key to C. C for crouch, makes sense. And then get into the habit of resting your thumb on C.
Got it.
Instead of the spacebar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would not be super obvious to me if I were to review this VOD myself.
Well,
yeah.
To me, it's like very painful to watch, right? It's like almost
very painful.
almost nauseating, right? So here, this is really, really good. So I mean, obviously, again, this is if I was coaching this Cassidy, I would tell him that his position is just fucking stupid. So him dying here, I wouldn't really worry too much about it. What I would worry about is the Torb dying, because you weren't really like aware of his position at all. Again, his position is just as dumb as Cassidy's, to be honest. Like, they're both ludicrously split, which is really, really bad. But especially in lower ranks, that's why it's important to every once in a while you're doing stuff here, just do a quick turn, kind of check where your teammates are, and then you can look back. Because you want to avoid situations where people die outside of your LOS.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, after you TP into the Cassidy, unfortunately you can't heal him in time, right? You take the fight against the Widowmaker, right? And here your movement is very nice, right? And it's reflected in your shots. You just double tap her, 2 headshots, right? So good movement makes a very, very big difference when it comes to accuracy. Right here, TPing into the Rhine, using your Suzu, this is all perfect, making sure he stays alive. Your team managed to get a few picks, which means you guys should be able to stabilize. But again, what do we want to do here?
Be peak shooting at the choke.
Exactly. And what does that do? It applies pressure.
Yeah.
And that pressure is very important, because if you don't apply any pressure here, it can be very easy for the enemy team to push through the choke, and it can prevent you guys from having enough time to actually regroup, right? So while your team is regrouping, you don't want to feed, right? But you still want to apply some pressure.
Yeah.
Whereas here, again, your positioning is very, very passive, and the enemy team, like, okay, look at this from the enemy team's perspective, right? Let's take the enemy Cassidy, for example. Again, insane movement by him. He's also spamming spacebar. But, like, I mean, what does he see here?
So just sees a point open for the taking.
Completely open for the taking, right? So you peak shooting already would send like a very different message. And look, he doesn't care. He just goes in, right? You guys aren't even really properly holding the point. So you want to regroup, right? But you don't have to play this passive. Obviously, don't play overly aggressive. Fall back once the enemy team starts falling in. But you'd be surprised how bad low elo players are at kind of evaluating the state of a fight. Which basically means that they see a Kiriko playing very aggressively and peak shooting, and they interpret that as, oh, the enemy team has already regrouped, otherwise you wouldn't play like that, right? So you can you can kind of get away with bluffing a little bit, almost. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. Right here, this is perfect, right? Because you see that the Widowmaker grapples up there, and what does that do? What is this Widowmaker to your team?
A massive threat.
A massive threat, right? So what do we need to do?
Apply pressure to threat to nullify it. That's what I thought.
Exactly, right? So by applying pressure to the Widowmaker, it honestly doesn't even really matter whether you land your shots here. Obviously, you landing your shots is like super dope. You know, I'm not going to complain about that. But the reality is that you just shooting her applies counter pressure, which prevents her from maintaining this position for that long. But okay, the enemy Rhine is doing weird stuff. Your team is doing a good job pushing in off of your pick, so this is all really nice. But again, you want to be aware of what your team is doing. So is there a particular teammate right now who maybe we need to take a look at?
Genji.
Exactly. Right?
Doing Genji things.
He's doing Genji. He's doing what he's supposed to, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of let him out of your sight, and you want to avoid doing that, right? Because what ends up happening is, again, another off-screen death. Okay, off-screen deaths suck, not just for Kiriko, for any support. You want to make sure that in between your heals, just quickly look over, right? Because it's not like he got one shot here, right? he was in here for quite a while, right? Did you see how slow that death was?
Mm-hmm.
More than enough time for you to quickly TP over, drop a Suzu. And this kind of aggressive TP is really good when you have tempo, when you have an advantage, right? If it was the other way around, if he dove in and it was like a 4v5, then obviously we don't want to TP into him because the enemy team is just going to roll you over. But when you recognize that your team is in a position to play aggressively, then we can, need to kind of keep an eye on teammates playing aggressively. Now, right here, this is a little bit unfortunate that your Lucio died. To be honest, you should have just Suzu'd immediately. Because when you have tempo, right, you want to use your abilities more liberally. Because at this point, the enemy team is not, like, your team is going to play very, very aggressively. So what are you saving the Suzu for, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And this is a perfect situation where, what am I saving it for? To save teammates. Lucio's dying.
Exactly that, right? But just preemptively. Your Lucio is pushing in. Just give him that invulnerability kind of preemptively, Because the enemy Ryan is going to die anyways, right? So there's no reason to hold on to our Suzu. There's not going to be a better opportunity, kind of coming for that. So now, right here, same thing as before. The enemy Widow has given away her position, right? Just a few peek shots, right? Just not a lot, but just a few, right? Like, obviously it's a little bit of a risk, but you guys are regrouping. 2 teammates are in spawn. You need to take a little bit of a risk. You need to apply pressure while your team is regrouping, right? Try not to die, but if you don't do anything here, it becomes very, very easy for the enemy team to take super aggressive positions, right? Look what your Torb does here, right?
Yeah.
He applies pressure and bam, just a random headshot. And that headshot, look what happens to the Widowmaker after she gets headshot. There she goes. She's no longer a threat to you, right? Does all of that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Again, my beautiful movement. Oh god.
Yeah, it's a little nauseating.
Yeah, now that you pointed it out, I'm like, I can't stop noticing it.
But that's good. That's what we're here for. Obviously it's going to take some time to kind of fix all of these issues one after the other. But again, it's not everything is going to get fixed in 60 minutes. This first session is usually just kind of to, not even really like directly fix issues, but just to kind of outline them so you get a good overview of which areas you're lacking in. But yeah, so what do we want to do now? Your team has completed its regroup. What should we be thinking about?
I've actually looked at this and I'm like, I probably should be trying to get to apply more pressure, and I see my ult. I'm like, this would actually be a very good opportunity for me to use my ult to just bring it down their necks, but I don't, and that's the thing that kills me the most about this play. That was complete misplay by me. I ult when our Rhine dies, and I'm like,
that's too
you know what? I could have done so much better here.
Yeah, right? This right here warrants a tempo play. The enemy team is playing very aggressively, right? You want to punish that over-aggression by the enemy team. Because let's just imagine for a second the enemy team wasn't positioned this aggressively. Let's say these people were over here. This would be a much more passive position. And let's say your team stands here and you would ult. What would the enemy team do?
They would just pull back.
Right?
Completely.
Right?
Yeah.
But here, they're playing aggressive. They're going in. Perfect opportunity. You need to go. You need to like snap and go. Nah, you're not gonna do this. I'm gonna use my ult, and we're gonna run you over.
Yeah, this is the worst time.
This is
bad.
And
no, I completely fucked this up.
That is wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's bad. I'm not full of budget. That's fucking terrible by me. That was bad. Like I said, I rolled after our Rhine dies. That was bad. But it was a learning moment. It's a teaching moment. I have to remind myself.
Yes.
It's a teaching moment.
Yes.
Fuck.
Right, that's why it's so important to always be aware of the state of the game, right? Are we currently regrouping? Is the enemy team regrouping? Do we have an ult advantage? Do they have an ult advantage? Who's applying a lot of pressure? Like, being aware of all of that info, because then you can derive your plays from that info, right?
Okay.
If you were actively thinking it's a 5v5 and the enemy team is playing aggressively, like, a switch needs to just go off in your brain that immediately goes, I can ult here.
Okay. Yeah, no, I haven't built that level of game sense up.
Right here, it's very bold that you didn't immortality
Yeah,
Suzu
no.
Ana.
Yeah,
Right.
that's another play I should have done. I really should have Suzu'd her when she got hit.
But it's very good that you're trying to apply pressure, throw some kunais at that spot to kind of try and force her
And
out. That's
that was
hilariously
dumb.
cocky. Right?
Yeah.
So what's the problem?
Widow has a one shot. I have two shots.
Yes, but if you remember, right, earlier when the Widowmaker was up here, I told you that you should have, or when the Widow is here, let's take this example, right? When the Widow was here and you two-tapped her, right? I called that a good play, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm telling you, right here, you killing the Widow is a bad play. What's the difference between these two situations?
So she was applying pressure to all the sight lines. She was applying pressure to all sight lines at the main point in point 1.
Yes.
On this one, she's just looking down at nothing.
Yes, exactly.
Until I pop up.
Right. So she hasn't really given us anything yet that makes it worth to take risks, right? If she was good, she would have killed you.
Yeah,
right?
No, that's another thing.
And that risk is fine if she is threatening your team. Right there in that position, not super threatening yet. Okay, good Suzu, keeping your Rhine alive. It's very unfortunate that we don't have an ultimate here, because again, your team just lacks tempo. The enemy team is using their Brigitte ultimate, which means they're going to play very aggressively. We could counter that aggression if we had our ultimate. Unfortunately, we don't. But a good thing is that the enemy team is actually over-ulting. For some reason, the Zenyatta also used his ultimate, which makes 0 sense. And now we need to wait for our tank, right? None of the enemies are applying any pressure currently, which means that there's no reason for us to, take any risks. We can just chill, wait for our tank to come back, be AFK, basically. Okay, we're back on high ground. Very fancy, but again, who do we not see?
We don't see, our team at all.
Well, yes, specifically in this case, the Ana.
Yeah.
Right? There is a threat, right? So now this guy, he's applying pressure. We need to apply counter pressure. More importantly, we need to keep an eye on our Ana, because she's, what if she gets picked here? That would be a huge stagger, right?
Yeah.
But she gets hit by shots, and you don't even see her until now. And you didn't apply any pressure on that Cassidy. Your monkey had to do that. Oh, huge anti. More nauseating movement. Okay, nice. Getting rid of the Discord orb. Oh, there's a Widowmaker. See, so right here, turning around for the Widowmaker is really, really good. Because now she's starting to apply pressure, so we need to apply counter pressure so she can't do stuff. Instinctually, however, you don't want to do that when she has initiative, right?
Yeah.
When someone has initiative like this, right? So land first shot, you just TP out, you stabilize, and then you address the threat. Because right here, taking this fight with 80 HP, I want to know actually if that shot was fully charged. It wasn't, right? That was a 60 charge shot. So if we were full HP, I'm pretty sure that that wouldn't have been enough to kill you. And yeah, now that Widow stays in that position, she keeps applying pressure and she kills your entire team. Had we just TP'd out, regenerated some HP, and then peak shot her, right? You would have been able to force her out, apply pressure, and prevent her from killing our team. Okay, we do have another ultimate soon, so let's make this count, because again, wasting our ultimates gives the enemy team a lot of tempo. It gives them a big ult advantage. So wasting ults gets punished pretty harshly. Ooh, see, now this is a situation, right, where you needed to get to him to save him.
Yeah.
But you
I
didn't.
remember debating that of like, is it worth it to save junk right now?
Well, what happens if he dies?
We're down 1 DPS and a lot of frontline pressure from him if he dies.
Right. So I'd say the risk is worth it.
Okay. So the biggest, I remember the biggest thing that was deterring me from doing that was like the entire team is there. The entire enemy team is there. That's where I was like, is it worth it to go in there, or is it worth it for them to get 1 pick or potentially get 2 if I were to throw myself in there?
Right, but does that make a difference?
At this stage of the game where like we've just regrouped, actually, yeah, it would have been better if I went in there and helped them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Whether 2 die or 1 dies doesn't really make that huge of a difference, because you can't make up for the lack of pressure from the Junkrat, right? So, this 4v5 is not going, like the cart is pushing. The enemy team is taking absolutely no damage. There's no pressure on them. Your entire team is dying. Kind of. The cart is still pushing, right? So yeah, take that risk, save him. Now you do ult here, which makes absolutely 0 sense.
Yeah, that's why I thought. Yeah, exactly. Like my ult usage is absolutely garbage in this game.
Right? Like you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like either you save him, you save the Junkrat, and then you ult, or you don't save him, but then you wait until he gets the fuck back, because this is there's a lot of stuff happening here. It's kind of a wild fight. And again, you're being very, very conservative with your Suzu usage. During your ult, you don't need to be that conservative with your Suzu. Like in the replay viewer, there's a bug, unfortunately. Like if you look at your Suzu cooldown, you'll see that once you ult, like, do you see how it doesn't go down any faster? But then right here, even though like 7 seconds were remaining, right? So you got it within like a few seconds. During your ult, you just shit out Suzus.
Okay. Yeah, no, I forget about that. Honestly, I need to be more cognizant of like my cooldowns coming up a lot quicker.
Yeah. Like right here, what are you holding the Suzu for?
Yeah, it's literally just because like I just used it, so in my head I'm counting down of like 15 seconds. That's the biggest reason. I try to TP in there and then work out.
It's going to require a little bit of practice, but over time you'll get it. Now I'm super sorry. I really fucked up my timing. I was hoping that we could finish this defense, but we're starting to approach the end of the session. So
no, it's fine.
I'm assuming the last fights are going to look pretty similar, but I'd like to have at least a few minutes at the end, so we can go over any final questions from your end, and I can go use capitalistic marketing techniques on you. So but let's start with the questions.
I don't really have anything. It's more of like I'm just completely absorbing everything that you tell me. I haven't really had time to like completely digest it. So, everything that you pointed out made perfect sense. I need to stop fucking jumping. I can lay off. I can stop taking high ground. That's another thing that I'll probably stop doing. It's more of the decision making things that I need to make to chew on more. Like what's worth it, what's not worth it. And it's going to be a learning curve. I already know it's going to be a learning curve, but eventually just more exposure helps that out. And the biggest thing that and just understand like when is it a good time to ult, because my ult usage is atrocious. But so when actually piggybacking on the ult usage thing really quick. So I know that Kiriko's ult is a tempo base. Like you
Yes.
want to make
Yes.
either you want to bring out your team to be further aggressive. Typically, I would assume that it's whenever the enemy team's being super aggressive with us, or um, stabilizing some type of stabilizing pressure,
Yes.
if that's the main way to say it.
Yes.
Um, so those, so I feel like just getting more exposure into those situations would bring out more questions, like was this a good ult, was this a bad ult,
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. I don't have any questions right now, just because I'm gonna take what you told me and I'm gonna apply it in game, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. And then if any questions come up, I'll probably be like, hey, can you look at this? What was difficult? What
Exactly. Yeah.
what didn't work out
Yeah.
here? Or did I do a good job? Did
Yeah.
I not do a good job? What stuff I could do
Yeah.
better?
Yeah.
So
Keep in mind, I,
yeah.
I sometimes, like, if you really want to focus on ult usage, for example, sometimes
Hmm.
I have sessions where someone just brings me like a huge pile of replay codes, like 10 replay codes or something, and
Hmm.
we just look at, like, we just open the replay code, but we skip everything except the ultimates, and like for an hour we literally just look at ult after ult after ult after ult. And from my experience, that very quickly hammers into someone's brain, kind of a feeling for, kind of seeing those patterns of what makes a good ult opportunity and what doesn't. um
Yeah.
yeah. Any other questions?
Mm, no, you gave me a lot, like all the actionable steps that I can actually do now. So stop fucking jumping, like you idiot. And yeah, and decision making. Those are the two biggest things that in my gameplay that I can improve. So yeah, that's really. I'm very happy that I had this session. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad I could be helpful. So, as I alluded to earlier, now we get to the capitalist marketing stuff. Don't worry, I'm gonna
Yay!
I'm gonna keep it short. The first question I actually have doesn't have anything to do with capitalist marketing. So season 2 is coming soon of Overwatch,
Yes.
and I want to start kind of uploading some sessions to YouTube again, which means that after, good sessions with people who, are like, uh, you know, who I think would do well on a video, I like asking them if they're okay with me using the session for a video. So, are you potentially okay with this session being used for a video?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Go ahead.
Awesome. Okay. Wait, 3 seconds. And